Welcome to the program. I'm Mark Imperial. This segment's brought to you by booksgrowbusiness.com. It's the place where busy professionals get their books done and published to educate consumers, grow their businesses, and to leave a legacy. This is a series of spotlights on remarkable exit planning advisors from across the country. Joining me on this segment is Matt Magness. He's the founder of Magness Consultancy. Matt, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here.
Matt, tell us a little bit about your work and specifically let us know who are the types of clients that you specialize in helping.
Most commonly, the clients I work with are owners of small businesses. And when I say small, I'll give a revenue range that might be helpful to people. Commonly, sort of between maybe 500,000 or $1 million on the revenue on the short end to maybe a $10 million business on the high end. The category for exit planning, oftentimes stretches upwards from that, maybe to 25 million or so before where a lot of these people, they're privately held businesses. So the services they look for are not massive consulting firms. They're a little less formal in terms of the businesses, in terms of size and activity. But that's a common range. And these are all privately held businesses. So usually it's someone who has built a business over the course of, say, 30 years. And it represents a big part of their whole retirement plan, their whole life, all their personal activities and the way their family has engaged oftentimes has been wrapped around this identity that's caught up in the business.
These business owners are great at their craft. They're great at thinking growth, growth, growth every day. But when it comes time to planning their exit, what's their biggest challenge? What do you find they are asking you?
The biggest challenge is, I wish I could say otherwise, but the biggest challenge is usually just procrastination. And that's not procrastination in a malicious way. It's that they've enjoyed their business. Their business has provided them a whole lifestyle and an identity. And to have to say goodbye to it, if you will, in some way is just challenging to think about. It's the same reason we don't, I hate to make that correlation because it's not the correlation I would like, but a little bit, we don't plan for sort of our own demise or our own funeral or something. We kind of just don't want to talk about it. And in a lot of cases, current business owners are seeing their businesses in decline even. They have grown very comfortable. After 30 years, they kind of can run the business without that many minutes every day and get by. They maybe don't have debt anymore, so they don't need quite as much profitability. They don't need quite as much revenue. And they get, frankly, they get a little bit lax in the later years of running a really optimized, more finely tuned business. That means it's just sort of a very comfortable way of gliding towards what they plan for in the future as retirement.
If these business owners can get beyond procrastination, do they even know what an exit plan looks like or what the process is like? What have you found?
Generally not. There's maybe a couple of correlations there. One is exit planning itself as a discipline or as an activity. The other one is simply selling a business. Both of these are usually very mysterious activities in people's minds as to what is it that I'm going to be doing? What are the actual steps or what's the process? And that's a big part of educating people is what that process might be and how can they go about actually optimizing and preparing for that process in a way that, makes more sense. And most crucially, that, most of these people, the proceeds from the business end up representing their big bet on having a comfortable retirement in whatever the definition of comfortable retirement is. They're very much expecting and hoping that the business sale will get proceeds to help them with their retirement. And so, with that, it's just a very challenging topic, and they are kind of fish out of water in terms of what the process might be, how it's supposed to work, what are the milestones, how to prepare, and so on.
Let's unpack that a little bit, if you could. I know it's a broad topic, but if you can give us a 10,000-foot view. When you come in and work with a business owner, what are those major areas that you cover that are most important in putting together a proper exit plan?
One thing is that you can't do it overnight to get prepared. So this 3 to 5 year time frame is a very loose time frame. A lot of people, sort of cheat on the short end of that when they finally sort of decide, okay, I'm going to get ready to do this. But 3 to 5 years would be optimal. So you give yourself some time, some runway with which to work with and plan for it. But then, assembling a team. This is a process of exiting a going enterprise. You typically want to sell it when it's in really good shape and looks really good. I'll make a simplistic analogy. We don't go and sell our house just, the way it's cluttered with our belongings and maybe it needs a paint job or something like that. We think of it and we plan ahead, right? So we paint and we repair and we do all sorts of things. We may even stage it. But for sure, we also know things like, where am I going to live next? How long is it going to take it to sell on the market? So very simplistic, but we're doing some of that with the business planning. We're creating a team, sort of legal, financial, accountant, financial meaning more so wealth planning or proceeds coming out of a business, and what are you going to do with those in order to optimize them? And beyond the team, then you're really starting to go through a process of what's the current state of the business? How does the business perform if you look at it and sort of say, what is the value of that business? So we're going through steps to evaluate the process, to then maybe work on optimizing the business. In many cases, as I mentioned, the business has been on decline because the baby boomers who own more than 60% of the businesses out there, and the wealth transfer is thought of as in excess of $10 trillion that are supposed to transition over the next few years. So they've let their businesses sort of coast and be on decline in their later years, oftentimes. Trying to figure out how to turn that around a bit and have a year or two of higher performance. That oftentimes is part of that planning, is that you need time to actually sort of, if you will, sharpen the saw, go back to making the business perform a little better, because the amount of profit, the amount of rising revenue, other things all go to that valuation that you're hoping to get.
Great insights. Matt, what inspired you to get into this field,
No,
and help business owners with their exit? How did you get started in this?
I appreciate you mentioning that, Mark, just because I do have a lot of passion for helping people harvest value out of something they've been doing for 30 years. And like it or not, and I think it is a little bit more associated with the US, we kind of live and our identities are wrapped up oftentimes in our professional personas. So baby boomers are giving up their sort of whole personhood in terms of how they've portrayed themselves to people. And that's a big part of why I have passion for this, is that helping them transition, not as much, psychologically or personally, but to help them transition to what is that life after business? How can I, actually capture and harvest the value out of the current business that I've been pouring my heart and soul into? And oftentimes it's dictated how many baseball games or dance recitals or something I've been to for my children my whole life. All these things are what I've put into the business. For me to actually sell it and not optimize and get the value out of it is just short-sighted. We need to just, if you will, we need to get our house in order, so to speak, and sell a business that someone else looks at and says, wow, that's a cool business. I would like to own that. We really have to connect with what's the buyer perception and how do we help people walk away feeling really good about it because of the career and the business they've built.
Right on. I really appreciate that. Matt, before I ask you my last question, is there
Sure.
anything that I didn't think to ask you that you feel is important to share with business owners considering exiting now or in the near future?
I think the biggest issue in my mind to emphasize with people is to be proactive, and not procrastinate, getting at least somewhat involved in the process. And that's simply because the vast majority of business ownership transitions that happen today in this group we're talking about is caused by things like death or disability or uh, divorce or some other distress that they have that actually forces their hand and they're not ready. If the business owner is now gone and their spouse, for instance, maybe is trying to sell the business and they maybe weren't that involved, we're really going to sub-optimize the value that is taken away. So start preparing now. And that doesn't mean you're going to have to sell. You're not saying because I'm preparing, I have to sell. There's no timeline you have to do it. But start preparing now with the idea that you're progressing to have the house closer to ready to sell, so that when you do, you're actually able to more gracefully and easily harvest the value out of it.
For business owners listening now who would like to speak with you, how can they find you, connect with you, and learn more?
Sure. My website, magnessconsultancy.com, is a good place to start. All of my contact information is there. A phone call, an email, anything like that can just initiate the discussion. It doesn't have to be a challenging or difficult discussion to just jump into and get, the beginning. And I think it is just that, a dialogue that has to produce what's the future you're trying to build. And I am very much dedicated to collaboration. So whether you've got other people involved, we become a team in order to try and make sure you can get your goals accomplished.
Matt, this has been terrific. I really appreciate you taking the time to share with my audience today, and I wish you continued success for you and for all of your clients.
I really appreciate that, Mark, and for the same for you. I think this is a great, participation in terms of helping people learn. I really appreciate your time as well.
That was Matt Magness, the founder of Magness Consultancy. And this segment's been brought to you by booksgrowbusiness.com. It's the place where busy professionals get their books done and published to educate consumers, grow their businesses, and to leave a legacy. That's all for now. I'm Mark Imperial, and thanks for joining me.